Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be continuing in my video series on 15 days of Python. Today is the day 5. We've started from day 1 up to this time, and if you've been with me up to this time, it's quite great to still have you here on board. We started the other video, the last video I started talking about data structures, what data structures were, and the different kinds of data structures that we have. We've talked about lists, and in this video we're going to be talking about tuples. What are tuples? What are the uses, and why do we use tuples instead of lists? In what cases can we use either a list or a tuple? We're going to be understanding all of that, and we're going to also be creating, assessing, unpacking and unpacking tuples. Of course, we'll be learning about the immutability of tuples and using tuple methods, and we'll be working with nested tuples. And finally, just like we've been doing in all of this course, we will be doing practical examples and exercise. The first question is, what is a tuple? Tuples are ordered collection of items that are immutable, meaning that they cannot be changed after they are created. Tuples are defined by enclosing items in parentheses. Unlike lists are using block brackets, and lists are very mutable. You could change list, you could restructure a list, you could change the values in a list, you could remove a value, you could add new values, you could delete an entire element, all of the elements in a list. But tuples are quite different because you can't do this in tuples. Tuples are immutable. They cannot be changed, but why? Most times it depends on the use cases. Sometimes tuples are mostly used because of data integrity, where you don't want to be changing the values within your data structure. Also, tuples could also be used for dictionaries because you can use it for key value pairs. And tuples are also very great when you're working with certain function. We're going to be doing an example on one of those functions where you can return multiple variables or multiple values from a function. You could use tuples to do all of this. So tuple has its own unique use case. One of the ways to know something is a tuple is that it has the parentheses, unlike the list that has the block bracket surrounding them. To create a tuple, you just assign a variable, and this variable you assign it a tuple. You use the parentheses, and you have 10.0, 20.0, these are just floats, and you can print the value of this tuple. And this is just how you could create a simple tuple. How do you access tuple items? You can access items in a tuple by their index starting from 0. So similar to what we are doing on list. On list, you could use the indexing as well to access the values in a list. The same thing you can do to a tuple. Don't forget the difference. In tuple, you cannot change. They are immutable, unlike lists that are mutable. Tuples don't change, but you can, however, access the value in a tuple. Here I have my coordinate. The coordinate that I have in the previous slide, I have 10 and 20. I could come here in my coordinate, this coordinate here, and I could access the first element in the coordinate. I could also access the second element in the coordinate. The first element in the coordinate is 10, and the second element is 20. I can access this various element within my tuple. Tuple packing and unpacking. What does packing and unpacking mean? In a situation where you assign multiple values to a single tuple, it's called packing. But in a situation where you're assigning the values of a tuple to multiple variables, now you have unpacking. This one is the packing, this first one here. Point is equal to 4, 5. This is packing because you're assigning multiple values to a tuple. Tuple packing and unpacking. In packing, what you're doing essentially is that you're assigning multiple values to a single tuple variable. Here we have just one variable called point, and we have assigned multiple values to the variable called point. And when you print it, it's going to come out as 4 and 5. This is the one you used to. However, you have situations where you could assign multiple values to multiple variables. And here you have your point. This is unpacking. These are multiple variables being assigned to multiple values. The values of point is 4 and 5. And now you are assigning two variables to two values. And this is new. And when you assign this and you want to print, if you print S, you're going to have 4, and if you print Y, you're going to have 5. So in unpacking, you are assigning values of a tuple to multiple variables. And we'll see more complex examples about this as we go along. So like I said before, tuples are immutable, which means that once you create tuples, their element cannot be changed. You cannot. And don't bother so much about the complexity of this if you've not used, because I've not done any kind of introduction to the try and except block. But I'm just using this to explain to you, just to show that when you try to assign a value to a tuple, you want to change the first index of the tuple, you want to change this, and you want to change it to 10. It's going to give you an error and tell you that the tuple object does not support item assignment, because once you've created a tuple, you cannot change the element of that tuple, and that's why I use the try and except block. Now, tuple methods. Why tuples do not support methods that modify their content? They do have a few methods, and you could use the count. The count returns the number of times a specified value appears in the tuple. If the value appears 4 times, the count is going to be 4. If it appears 5 times, the count is going to be 5. Essentially, what the count does is to check for each appearance of the particular element within that tuple and takes account of it. And like what we've been doing with list as well, we have the index. On the index, it searches the tuple for a specified value and returns the position of where it was found. You can also use the index. Look at the example I have here. I have a tuple here, numbers. Numbers have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements within these numbers, and I'm going to take a count of 2s. How many times does 2 appear? I have the first one here, and I have the second and the third. So if I say the count of 2, numbers.count is going to return 3 because it appears 3 times. And if I'm taking the index of 5, the index of 5, 1, 2, so it starts from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is going to be 5. The position 5 is assigned to 5. So the position 5 is assigned to 5 here. Nested tuples. So tuples can contain other tuples and creating a nested structure. If you've worked with other programming languages like JavaScript, working with JSON files, you will know what it means to have nested structures. And tuples can have nested structures as well. Nested is just saying that you could have a tuple inside of a tuple. And now we're going to see the first example of that. We have nested tuple here. We have the main tuple, which is the one that we can see here outside here. And inside of the nested tuple, or inside of the main tuple, we have this individual tuples inside of the nested one. So this is inside of the main one. So these are nested tuples inside of the main tuple. And if you say print, the nested tuple is going to return individually of these tuples. And because we can do the indexing, we can say the nested tuple, our nested tuple, we'll take the very first value, the very first element in the tuple. The first element is this. This is the first element in the tuple. Within that first element, we are going to take the second element from the first element. We're taking the first element from the main tuple. Within that first element from the main tuple is a tuple. And in that tuple, we are going to be taking the second element, and the second element will be 2. And that is why we have 2. Similarly, we could say we want to take the second element. The second element would be this. And on the second element is a tuple. And that tuple is 5. The 5 is the first element in that tuple. And we can return 5. So what that does is take the second element and return the first element. Let's do some practical example and see how we can do storing of coordinates. Let's head over to our environment. So I've taken the liberty to create the folder, have the code in it, just to save time. I have a tuple in a list. So the list is the main structure, and within the list I have about 3 tuples. Don't bug yourself so much about the for loop, because we're going to have a section explaining the for loop, but I just wanted to give you an idea on how these things can come across. For point in point, what I'm saying, for each of the elements in this list, I want to select the first and the second element in each of the tuples. When you are done with that, I want to now print each of those elements. So for each tuple in the list, I want to print 1 and 2. I go over to the next. I'll print 3 and 4. I'll go over to the next. I print 5 and 6. And when I run that, that is what is going to come. So for each one, it prints out 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 4 and 5 and 6. And the more tuple you have, the more you're going to print out, regardless of the number you have there. The second example is going to be us trying to return multiple values from a function. Well, we've not done anything around function, but just understand the concept. We just want to explain how tuples are really useful when you are returning the values from a function. And that is one of the major use cases that most developers have when working with tuples, because with tuples, you're able to return multiple values ascribed to multiple variables. So we're going to be doing that within the function. And again, I've taken the liberty to write this out but I'm going to explain what it means. I want to get start. This is a function. I'm defining a function, and in the function I'm saying get start numbers. I have a variable called total. In my variable, I'm saying it's going to take the sum of all the numbers that will be provided, and count is going to take the length of the numbers, and average is going to be total over count. This is a condition just to ensure that we don't get an error, especially when you want to do any number divided by 0. You're likely to get a math error. So you're likely to get a math error. We just wanted to take care of that. This is the place where tuple becomes very useful, because in this tuple you're able to assign multiple values to multiple variables, and you have all of these variables and you can return those values for each of them. When we are calling the function, this is what happens when we are calling the function. We list out the numbers that we want to do this calculation for, and it's going to be a list, and in the numbers we'll say numbers is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and all we simply say is total, count, average is equal to, we call our function and we provide the numbers, and everything is returned. I know this might be complicated for a couple of persons, especially because we're just taking this gradually from the onset, and we're going to get to functions where we explain how you create functions, how you do that around function. But for now, just get used to the fact that tuples could be applied in a more complicated scenario. And when you get hands-on and working with functions using all of this, you will have a better understanding and a better handling on the implications of this when you're working with tuple. But I just thought to let you have this so you start thinking about it even before we get there. Now to our exercise. Our exercise is much more simpler than the examples, and the reason I do that is intentional, so that you can, I really want you to try it out. I want you to try out the exercises, see if you can get your hands on it. What you can do, can you execute this, can you make this happen? And that is why we make the examples a bit more simpler. In the examples, we're going to write a Python script that takes a tuple of numbers from the user and print the smallest and largest number, kind of similar to what we did with the list, but this is on tuple. So let's go over to our environment and see how we could tackle this. I'm now going to create one for, okay, so I'm going to call this taking a tuple of numbers as input from the user. That's what we want to do. So where are the numbers going to come from? We want the users to input the numbers. So what this does is it's going to take in strings or values. When you put in the numbers, it's going to be strings, and afterwards it's going to split up the strings. When the strings are split up, we are going to use the map to map each of the strings to an int to become integers. And when they're done becoming integers, when we are done with the mapping, we can now convert everything to a tuple. And if I should quickly print this, it's going to give me this. And let's say I just put in any numbers. I put in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is what I'm going to have. It's returning a tuple, as we can see here. Now, but what I want to do is to look for the maximum and the minimum number. So the smallest is going to be min, the largest is going to be max, and we're going to print each of these. And if I run this and I put in my numbers again, I'm going to say, don't forget that each of them I'm separating it by a space. It prints out everything. You may not need this, but I just had it here. When it's done printing, it tells me that the smallest number is 2 and the largest number is 8, which is consistent with what I have there. And it's a simple exercise, and I just hope you were able to complete it. I think that's the end for today, and we just did on tuple. And in our next video, we're going to be looking at a different perspective, a different set of data structure within Python. And I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and so that others can have access to this, and to also encourage us to keep doing more of these videos. I'm going to see you in my next video. Thanks for now. Bye.